Have you ever woken up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling while your mind replays a conversation that hasn't even happened yet? Or maybe you're sitting in traffic and your heart is racing because of a what-if scenario that likely won't ever come true. It's that heavy, tightening sensation in your chest, the feeling that the world is closing in and you're losing your grip. We've all been there. We've all felt like a prisoner to our own thoughts. But what if the greatest thinkers in history, men who faced executions, plagues, and the collapse of empires, had a literal cheat code for deleting that feeling? Today, we aren't just talking about managing stress. We are going to dismantle it. I'm going to reveal 9 powerful, Stoic strategies that will transform your mind from a chaotic storm into a fortress of calm. By the end of this video, you won't just understand anxiety, you'll know exactly how to make it disappear. 1. The Dichotomy of Control. The first and most vital tactic is what Stoics call the dichotomy of control. Most of our anxiety stems from a single massive mistake. We try to control things that are fundamentally outside of our power. We worry about the weather, the economy, or, most commonly, what other people think of us. Psychologically, this creates a state of learned helplessness. When you tie your happiness to an outcome you can't guarantee, you are choosing to be a victim. Epictetus, a slave-turned-philosopher, taught that our only true power lies in our opinions, our intentions, and our own actions. Everything else, your reputation, your body, your wealth, is external. Imagine you're a professional archer. You can choose how much you train, how well you maintain your bow, and how focused you are when you pull the string. But the moment the arrow leaves the bow, it is no longer yours. A gust of wind can blow it off course. A bird can fly in its path. If your happiness depends on hitting the bullseye, you will always be anxious. But if your happiness depends on shooting the best shot possible, you are free. Stop trying to move the wind. Focus on the bow. Do premeditatio malorum, negative visualization. This is the tactic that scares most people, but it's actually the ultimate cure for fear. Most modern advice tells you to visualize success or think positive. But the Stoics knew that surprise is the multiplier of pain. Premeditatio malorum means the premeditation of evils. It involves sitting quietly and vividly imagining the very things you are afraid of. Losing your job, a breakup, a health scare. You don't do this to be a pessimist, you do it to strip the mystery away from the fear. I knew a guy named Mark who was terrified of public speaking. He spent weeks in a state of high anxiety. Finally, he sat down and asked, "What is the absolute worst that could happen?" He imagined tripping, forgetting his words, and people laughing. He realized that even if that happened, he'd still be alive. He'd go home, eat dinner, and his dog would still love him. You know what happened next? His anxiety vanished. By facing the monster in his mind, he realized it was just a shadow. Most people don't realize that anxiety thrives on the unknown. Once you map out the worst-case scenario, you realize you have the tools to survive it. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The view from the stars is the ultimate cure for the suffocating grip of an overactive ego. Anxiety has a deceptive way of shrinking your entire world until your current problem feels like the absolute center of the universe. But Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, practiced a mental exercise called the view from above to reclaim his sanity and perspective. When you feel the cold prickle of a panic attack or the crushing weight of a looming deadline, you must practice the art of mental ascension. Imagine yourself rising out of your body, hovering above your room, then zooming out further until your city, your country, and the entire earth become nothing more than a pale blue dot suspended in the silent, velvet vastness of space. Now look back at your crisis from that impossible height. How massive is that embarrassing email when viewed against the backdrop of the swirling Milky Way? How significant is a stranger's rude comment when weighed against 10,000 years of human history and the billions of souls who have walked this earth before you? This exercise works because it triggers a profound cognitive shift, physically moving your processing from the reactive, emotional brain to the objective, rational brain. You aren't ignoring your responsibilities, you are simply stripping them of their false power by putting them back in their proper place, within the timeline of existence. You are a tiny, yet vital part of a massive, beautiful, and ancient cosmos that has survived far worse than your current stress. Your ego desperately wants you to believe your crisis is an impassable mountain, but from the perspective of the stars, even the highest peaks look like nothing more than settled dust. The man who is most at peace is the one who has already survived his fears on purpose, transforming a potential catastrophe into a controlled exercise. Seneca, despite being one of the wealthiest and most influential power brokers in Rome, would regularly set aside several days a month to live like a beggar, consuming only the cheapest scraps of food and wearing the roughest, most common clothing. As he walked the streets in this diminished state, he would repeatedly ask himself a singular, grounding question: is this what I feared? This wasn't a performance for others, but a vital psychological inoculation against the crippling anxiety of losing, the primal fear that we might one day lose our hard-earned comfort, our social status, or our carefully curated lifestyle. Anxiety thrives in the gap between your current luxury and your fear of poverty, but by practicing voluntary hardship, you bridge that gap and prove to your subconscious that your well-being isn't tied to external triggers. You must intentionally invite discomfort into your life to strip it of its mystery and power. Take an ice-cold shower, sleep on the hard floor for a night, or intentionally skip a meal when you are hungry. When you realize through direct experience that you can be perfectly happy and functional with nothing but the absolute basics, the threats of the world suddenly lose their teeth. You stop being a psychological hostage to your own comforts and start becoming a person who can survive and even thrive in any environment. This radical self-reliance is the true death of anxiety, because it replaces the what-if of disaster with the I have of endurance. By choosing the struggle today, you ensure that the future can never truly blindside you. Imagine a fire that doesn't just resist the wind, but uses the gale to grow into a roaring inferno. That is the essence of Amor Fati, the Stoic practice of loving one's fate. This isn't a passive, begrudging acceptance of your life's hardships, but a radical, celebratory embrace of every single moment, the triumphs, the tragedies, and the mundane struggles alike. To a Stoic, life is not a series of unfortunate accidents, but a perfectly designed script written to forge the strongest version of your soul. Think about the structure of your favorite movie. If the hero faced no obstacles, encountered no villains, and achieved every goal with zero effort, you would turn it off in 5 minutes out of sheer boredom. We only value the victory because we witnessed the struggle that preceded it. The conflict is precisely what makes the story worth watching. Stoics view their own lives through this same cinematic lens. When a disaster strikes, a flat tire in the rain, a missed promotion, or a sudden illness, the practitioner of Amor Fati says, "Good, this is the exact fuel I need to build my character." When you treat every obstacle as high-octane fuel for your personal growth, the very concept of anxiety begins to evaporate. You stop seeing the world as a predator, launching a series of personal attacks, and start seeing it as an elite training facility providing you with the necessary exercises to become unbreakable. Like a fire that devours everything thrown into it to become brighter and hotter, you transform every setback into a source of power. Don't waste your energy wishing for life to be easy or for the storm to pass. Instead, cultivate the internal strength to turn every disaster into a decisive victory. The facts of your life are never what actually wound you. It is the elaborate, terrifying stories you wrap around those facts that create the agony of anxiety. Most of our mental suffering is built entirely on value judgments rather than objective reality. We rarely see an event for what it truly is. Instead, we immediately cloak it in a narrative of catastrophe. We don't just see the fact that my partner hasn't texted back in 4 hours. we see a tragic drama where my partner is falling out of love and I am destined to be alone forever. This jump from data to drama is where peace of mind goes to die. The powerful Stoic antidote to this spiral is objective representation, a tactic famously used by Marcus Aurelius to maintain his composure while ruling an empire. To ground himself, he stripped the world of its seductive adjectives and prestige. He described the most expensive, sought-after Falernian wine as nothing more than fermented grape juice, and his imperial purple robe, the ultimate status, symbol of Rome, as merely sheep's wool dyed with the blood of a shellfish. By reducing these items to their physical components, he removed their power to provoke desire or ego. The next time you feel the cold grip of anxiety tightening, pause and describe your situation with the cold, detached precision of a laboratory scientist. Instead of saying, "I'm failing at my job and everyone hates me," say, "I am sitting in a chair. A glowing screen is displaying black pixels in the shape of letters. My heart is currently beating 10 beats faster than it was 60 seconds ago." By stripping away the adjectives and the story, you effectively starve the fire of its fuel. You halt the nightmare before it can even begin. You set yourself up for a psychological collapse. Every time you attach your happiness to a specific outcome, effectively handing the keys to your peace of mind to a universe that doesn't owe you a thing. Most people walk through life making absolute declarations. I am going to land this promotion, or this event will be perfect. When reality inevitably deviates from that rigid script, their world shatters. The Stoic antidote to this fragile way of living is the reserve clause, a simple but profound mental habit of adding a silent, fate permitting to every plan, desire, or goal. This technique, often referred to as hupex heresis, involves acknowledging the boundary between your effort and the world's chaos. Instead of saying, "I will win this race," the Stoic says, "I will run as hard as I am capable of, and if nothing prevents me, I will win." It is the subtle difference between, "I will go for a walk today," and "I will go for a walk today, unless it rains." This small mental addition acknowledges a fundamental truth. You are not the god of the universe, and you do not control the weather, the traffic, or the opinions of a hiring manager. Adopting the reserve clause doesn't mean you become lazy, cynical, or half-hearted. On the contrary, it allows you to be more fully committed to the effort, because you aren't paralyzed by the fear of a failed result. You become a person who plays the game for the sake of the game itself, rather than being a slave to the scoreboard. You pour 100% of your soul into the things you can control: your preparation, your integrity, and your focus, while remaining totally detached from the eventual outcome. By doing your absolute best and leaving the rest to the universe, you become an unbreakable force that no external disappointment can touch. You are almost always a kinder, wiser, and more rational advisor when you are speaking to a friend than when you are trapped inside your own head. When a close friend is spiraling with anxiety, your natural instinct is to offer a steady hand and a broader perspective, saying, "Hey, take a breath. You've handled much worse than this before, and you'll handle this too." Yet the moment that same anxiety strikes you, your internal dialogue shifts into a brutal, catastrophic narrative. "I am a complete failure. This is the end of everything I've built." This discrepancy exists because you are too close to your own thoughts to see them clearly. To bridge this gap, Stoics and modern psychologists alike practice cognitive distancing, a mental maneuver that forces you to step outside your immediate ego. Imagine you are observing your current situation from the perspective of a wise, detached mentor, perhaps a historical figure like Marcus Aurelius, or even a version of yourself 10 years in the future who has already survived this crisis. From that vantage point, would they be panicking alongside you? Or would they look at your current struggle with a calm, knowing smile, recognizing that this too is merely a passing cloud in a very long life? One of the most effective ways to trigger this shift is by referring to yourself in the third person. By using your own name instead of saying "I," you literally lower your cortisol levels and create a physical space between your core identity and your transient thoughts. You begin to realize a fundamental Stoic truth. You are not your feelings. You are the one who notices your feelings. By putting a few feet of mental distance between the observer and the observed, you transform a terrifying nightmare into a manageable set of facts. You are no longer drowning in the storm. You are the lighthouse watching the waves crash below. The future is a phantom that hasn't arrived, and the past is a fading memory that no longer exists. The only territory you actually occupy is the eternal. Now, anxiety is almost exclusively a tax you pay on a future that may never happen, while guilt is a heavy anchor dragging you into a past that cannot be rewritten. Peace, therefore, is not a destination you reach after solving all your problems. It is a frequency you tune into by grounding yourself in the immediate present. Marcus Aurelius, despite the weight of an entire empire on his shoulders, constantly reminded himself that even if he were to live for 3,000 years, the only thing he could ever truly lose is the present moment, because that is all he ever actually possessed. You cannot truly suffer in the future because you aren't there yet. You can only suffer in the now, by inviting the ghost of the future to haunt your current thoughts. When you find yourself spiraling, it is usually because you are trying to solve the next 10 years in the next 10 minutes. This is a mathematical and psychological impossibility that leads straight to burnout. The Stoic strategy for reclaiming your sanity is to shrink your world until it is only as large as your next breath. If you can handle this one inhale, this one step, or this one specific task sitting on your desk, you can handle anything the universe throws at you. Stop trying to live your entire life at once. The big picture is often just a breeding ground for overwhelm. The small picture, this very second, is where your power resides. By focusing your entire being on the task at hand, you strip the future of its ability to intimidate you. The future is a ghost and the past is a memory, but this moment is the only place where you are truly alive and capable of action. We've traveled through 9 strategies today, moving from the frustration of a cluttered mind to the confidence of a Stoic fortress. You aren't a victim of your biology or your circumstances. You are the architect of your own internal peace. You value wisdom. You value resilience. You are the kind of person who looks at a storm and decides to become the lighthouse. The next time anxiety knocks on your door, don't try to hide. Open the door, invite it in, and show it that you have nothing to fear. The world can take your money, your comfort, and even your health, but it can never take your ability to choose your own character. Be the mountain, let the clouds pass. Have you ever used one of these strategies to calm your mind? Which one do you need to hear the most today? Share your thoughts in the comments. We're building a community of modern Stoics here, and your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to read. If you want to keep building your inner fortress, hit the like button and subscribe. Your journey to an unbreakable mind has only just begun. I'll see you in the next one.